Hello, good morning, everyone. It's 7:34 in the morning. It took us a while to work out the StreamYard. I hope you like the new software we have, and like how all of us are now on the screen, and we have like nice little name tags, and I can put a lot of things like on the screen as well, like links, information, and so on for you all as we're doing those live streams. So I hope you're having a great commute, whether you're on the bus, on the train, or still sitting at home waiting for your workday to start. So today I'm joined again by David and Stephen. We decided after our last Facebook live stream that we're going to do this more regularly. We're going to chat we're going to have a coffee chat about politics in Huntingdonshire, but also in Cambridgeshire more generally, depending on the story of the day, and also to have at least a little bit of a bus conversation in uh, every single of those lives. So whether you were speaking about I don't know, education or highways or any topic in local government, we'll make sure that we'll have our bus comment of the day as well during those live streams. So for those of you who are watching for the first time our comments about local politics in Cambridgeshire. I'm Alex. I'm one of the county councillors in Cambridgeshire County Council. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm also a county councillor at Cambridgeshire County Council. I'm on executive council, which means I'm a cabinet member at Huntingdonshire District Council, and I'm not politically aligned, so I'm independent.
All right. And David, over to you.
I'm on Huntingdon Town Council.
All right, so thanks both for joining. I wear a number of different hats in Cambridgeshire County Council. So I'm on children and young people. I'm on adults and health as well. So do ask questions about those committees. But of course, I'm very active around the topic of public transport and buses. That's why I started doing the TikToks about buses and how we actually started to do those conversations. But today we thought we'll do a different topic because we have all seen, everyone who's following politics in our county has seen the stories yesterday and over the last week really around what happens at the combined authority. And I think when speaking to people on the doorstep in my area, often people don't even know, and I didn't know about all the structures of local government in Cambridgeshire before I became elected in politics and before I was preparing for the campaign. So it's really interesting how many people do know, for example, that we have in most places, we have outside Cambridge City, we have a parish or town council, we have the district council, we have the county council, and on top of that, we have the combined authority, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and of course, the ever-present conversation about the GCP, the Greater Cambridge Partnership as well, which affects a lot of decisions locally. So first of all, before we start on digging into the news stories of this week, David, would you like to explain what is the combined authority for viewers who perhaps don't know about those structures, and where does it sit within the various structures of local government in our county?
So at the bottom of the pile, you've got town and parish councils. They're the same thing.
Unless you're in Cambridge City, of course.
Unless you're in the city of Cambridge, which isn't parished. Above that, you have district councils. Above that, you have county councils. The GCP is mixed in there, but it was felt a few years ago that there should be sort of strategic oversight or strategic body for the area. Originally, it was going to include Norfolk and Suffolk, but they sort of backed out. So the combined authority covers Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Peterborough is a unitary authority, so it's just Peterborough Council. There's a directly elected mayor of Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, which is Dr. Nick Johnson. And then there's it's given various sort of pots of money and so on. So it's meant to be doing, it is doing local economic growth, housing, transport stuff, skills and apprenticeships, and a few other things, but I think those are the big ones. I think I'm right in saying. So the combined authority, you have the directly elected mayor, then so Peterborough City Council, Cambridgeshire County Council, Cambridge City Council, and then each of the districts. So Huntingdonshire, Fenland, South Cambs, East Cambs each have a person on the board, and there's also the chair of the business board is on there as well. So that's the makeup of it. I mean, the idea originally was to sort of devolve power and so on. I mean, I'm quite cynical about some of the motives for setting it up. I'm quite happy to go into that, but yeah, that's the sort of basics of it.
So, Stephen, when did you find out about all those structures, like leaving, of course, the county for a long time? When did you find out about all those various layers of local authority?
Genuinely, when I wrote a newspaper article about 6 months ago. Well, I understood. So when I was elected to district council, the combined authority became a lot clearer. Yeah, and on paper, at least, the combined authority seems like a good way of running government, doesn't it? Because it's like it's local areas coming together under an elected mayor. And so if you look what's happening in Manchester under Andy Burnham, who's a Labour mayor, or in the West Midlands under Andy Street, who's a Conservative mayor, yeah, in those areas, and there's a great podcast out at the moment, which is The Rest is Politics Leading Edition, interviewing both those guys together, and it's amazing because you can see all the good that comes out of those areas. They're both really big combined authorities. I think they have between like 17 and 20 districts. Whereas our combined authority has got 5 districts, which almost exactly map over the county. So the only difference is that we have Peterborough outside Cambridgeshire County Council territory. And, you know, if you go back to when 20 years ago, Peterborough was part of Cambridgeshire. So the problem with our combined authority, I think, is that it's not big enough. It has the additional and you have all these different structures. You have some unitaries, some mostly what they're called tertiaries, whatever. We've got, you know, district and county council rather than just a unitary. And it's just not big enough. And then you have the added complication. You've got the GCP thing kind of over the top of it, which is like another half a level of government, which covers some of the areas. And I think that we've probably got the most complicated local government in the country as well. And at the moment, it's really not working, despite the best intentions of some really good people. And we've seen that play out in the last couple of days, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask what is not working, because there are various topics you can speak about, but I will try a banner. Let's see, because it's the first time we are using this this software to see whether this works. Yes, perfect. What do you think about local government structures? I wanted to write like local government structures are way too complex. Please comment. But yeah, it looks like GB News here. So okay, well, not it's more high quality, we promise, debate than the GB News, but like the graphic looks very similar to those of some of the shows. So I'll bring in the news story of the week, really, like in terms of like local politics. And I really, really liked this quote from John Elworthy, who published this article, well, yesterday, about what was going on in the combined authority when they had their meeting this week, and the local transport and connectivity plan was vetoed again. So we can go into the context of how it was voted down last time, and like what are the changes, and perhaps some of the detail for those who are interested in the detail of that. But before we do that, there is this wonderful quote that I did tweet yesterday. There are lies, damned lies, and then there is the Facebook activity of Peterborough MP Paul Bristol. So who would like to explain what is the controversy here? What actually happened this week in the combined authority meeting?
So I can have a go if you like. So what David described earlier with the difference between unitary and councils like Huntingdonshire is that they have different powers. So mostly across most of kind of traditional Cambridgeshire, not including Peterborough, the county council is a transport authority, which means they have the final say on transport decisions. Peterborough, being the unitary, has its own transport responsibilities, and so there's kind of an unequal partnership. So when it comes to talking about transport matters, Cambridgeshire City, Huntingdonshire, Fenland, and East Cam don't have the opportunity to veto decisions, where because they're a transportation authority, if they don't like it, then Peterborough has a veto. So these kind of big transportation policies have to be voted through by Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council. So what happened yesterday, I think for no really good reason, is that Peterborough City Council tried to use its veto for political gain as well. So if you look through the transportation policy they were trying to vote for on it, it's entirely sensible, I think. I mean, there might be some small controversial figures, but the guy who vetoed it, who's the leader of Peterborough City Council, didn't speak in a debate and just used his veto for political ends. And I think that illustrates the problem with our combined authority, because it's so small that some areas have lots of power, and the whole thing since the very not since the very start, but certainly since Nick Johnson's era, has become subject to kind of political hissy fits, and it's being manipulated for political gain rather than everybody coming together for the good of the residents of the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, is my view.
David, what do you think about yesterday's news story?
So let me broadly, there's been this thing going around that and from some members of the Conservatives in Peterborough saying that road charging is going to be imposed in Peterborough. The only organisation that can do that is Peterborough City Council. End of. And it strikes me as somewhat disingenuous to be going and saying, they want to introduce road charging, when nobody's been suggesting that. It's a bit like taxes on meat or 7 bins. No one's been suggesting it, and even if the combined authority wanted to, they can't. I mean, it's the same thing that some I'm afraid some Conservatives in Peterborough have been saying that the Labour group on Peterborough City Council wants to introduce road charging. No, they don't. They've said that they don't. And it's unfortunate. It's frustrating, and part of it is, so the local government system we've got sort of basically dates back to 74, but that act was written in part before that. But I think in parts before the war. So we've got this very complicated, clunky system that was designed for a time that is long past. But also, even then, I don't think it was a very good system, where you've got this bonkers division between responsibility. So let's say you want to build, right. Yesterday evening, Huntingdon Town Council's planning application panel, we were talking about an application for a development up the road. Fine. Just thinking about that one. The planning permission for that would be given by the district council. The highways would be put in by the county council. The buses would be sorted out by, I think, the combined authority and the county council. The bus stops could be the town council, as well. So you've got this complete, this really big mess, where in one area services that look very similar are being provided by different organizations. I think that lack of coordination is a real problem. You also, and a few years ago there was a thing called the Localism Act, which brought in the general power of competence. So for sort of my level, town councils and parish councils can do, apart from taking out a mortgage, can do anything that an actual person can do. Basically saying, look, and the basic idea there is a good one, let people innovate and so on. The issue is it's led to more duplication. So let me take St Neots, where you are, Stephen, as an example. Bus stops in the centre of town are by the district council, but on the outside of town are by the parish council. And I kind of think that leads to unnecessary complication, that there should be an organisation that is responsible for buses. One of the council should be responsible for it, kit and caboodle. rather than having it split across different things. So that's a particular complaint of mine, that trying to work out who's responsible for the infrastructure can be quite difficult. But I'll on local government, I mean, I think local government in England needs a really big rework anyway. I did some research a few years ago. It works out that there are 22 types of council in the United Kingdom, which is, I mean, some of them there's only one of them, like the Isles of Scilly or the City of London, but it's quite a complicated picture. And I think I'm right in saying that Cambridgeshire is the only combined authority that has 3 levels of local government underneath it. Everywhere else, it's the council. And so I think that there is a good argument to have a big strategic body doing the big strategic things, and then have a local council. And then I actually think it's quite a good idea to have a town or a parish council for place building, whatever you want to call it, placemaking. That may be me trying to justify my own existence. But generally, the whole system of local government really needs looking at. But I think Cambridgeshire it's particularly important that that happens.
So in your ideal scenario, David, you still have like kind of like 3 layers, so but maybe with different powers. So you still have like a parish level for like, you know, decentralized projects, like very local level decisions. You still have the council like as one, you know, unitary, and then you still have like a body like the combined authority or something.
Well, so what I would, I mean, if it would, right, I'm gonna answer this, but. I just want to highlight this. This is, I know a little bit about it, but this is me speculating a bit, and so this is something that needs quite a lot of work that's sort of beyond my capacity to do. Ideally, I think what my preference would be small unitaries. So you'd have small unitary authorities. Ideally, I think I would want some form of regional government, so that the combined authority would be Cambridgeshire, Essex, Norfolk, Suffolk, and is doing things at that scale. And then the town and parish councils are doing the very local stuff. I mean, it also depends a bit. So, like in Cambridge City, that would be the city council, which would really be a small unitary, but that would be, you know, it has that placemaking function. The thing is, I think I'm right in saying that in Wales, you have principal authorities. You just have the council, and then you can have a community council underneath it, but they can be set up and shut down more easily. And so if an area decides, well, actually, we don't think we need a parish council, you don't have one. And I think that's quite an interesting way of doing it. So you actually have to have a sort of specific function, you know, it's got to be worthwhile to do. And I think it's that local stuff, that local voice, and I think that role in placemaking where town and parish councils are useful.
Stephen?
My view is this. I think having served recently at all 3 levels of local government, well, not really at the combined authority, which is next level up, but I've been mayor of St Neots for a few years. I'm on a cabinet at HDC. I was chair of county. For me, the most effective of those layers of local government is a district council. It's the right size. It gets stuff done. You know, it does things that people care about, like parks and bins. Towns, I like parish councils quite often because, like David said, they're quite informal placemaking organisations which are run by local residents. Town councils get stuck in the middle and they get drawn into these kind of district level discussions and sometimes get too big for their boots. Yeah, and in lots of ways, I mean, I think St Neots Town Council sorted itself out recently. There's a problem with clerking in that level of local government as well, and there's lots of bad decisions that get taken by town councils which probably aren't legal but don't get enough scrutiny. County council was just too big and too unwieldy. I mean, I used to be the chair, very loyal to Cambridgeshire County Council, but I don't understand it all. You know, it's so massive, the number of employees is huge, and dealing with huge problems like adult social care and highways, it's just massive as well. So for me, I like the ideas of district councils coming together in kind of an enhanced combined authority would be the ideal for me. But I guess because I'm a double hat now and at district and county council, I'm kind of working for a confused unitary as well. Everything's actually my problem. But they, you know, like David said, if somebody reports a lamppost isn't working in St Neots, there's about an equal chance it's a responsibility of the county council, town council, and district council. And quite often nobody knows, and you spend weeks trying to work it out. And so the big point is that residents don't understand, even elected representatives don't understand how it all works, and so it's too complicated. It needs to be simplified.
Yeah, I definitely. Sorry, go on, David.
I wanted to pick up on the right size issue. The thing is, Huntingdonshire feels like it's easy to manage, more understandable. You think, Cambridgeshire is massive. There is something that would have to be done about the sort of economies and so on, and where some things like adult social care would go. That's a massive, expensive responsibility and morally very important. But it's like it may be that would have to, you would have to rethink where that goes, and you might need a slightly larger councils. I don't know. This is the point I'm making about needing more work to work out where that goes. But the thing is, as I say, Cambridgeshire is so big, it's unwieldy.
What do you think, Alex? You're not going to get away.
Well, I was going to, but then like David wanted to add something, so I thought it's better to add now if it's on the same point. Yeah, I'd only have the experience of being on county council, but of course I do see some of the issues at district and parishes as well, just speaking to colleagues, and I do sit on some combined authority, various sub bodies and subcommittees and so on, and like the ESOL stuff that we're doing. I think, for me, from a resident perspective and someone who, until 2 years ago wasn't really involved in all those structures, and I definitely haven't studied it from an academic perspective. Like, I think from a resident perspective, of course, it is too complicated. It's like about how you communicate, like who complains where do you get this, the stuff that you want to be done. But for me, I think the biggest argument for simplifying the system is actually how efficiently decisions can be made. And the counter argument to that is actually more accountability. But often like more layers and therefore more accountability means that big things that we actually need and we need now, such as transport decisions, such as like big changes in the region, can't really happen quickly enough. And that's why we're still stuck in a lot of debates 20 years later, 30 years later, because the more layers you have, the more likely it is the politics of those layers will be different and nothing will be agreed. That's what, of course, we see in the case of certain decisions being vetoed because of how those structures were set up. And it is the way that people have power to do that because that's exactly how it was set up. You do have the right to veto those decisions. But in general, I think observing what happens across other UK regions as well, how many of the decisions that ultimately residents, even if people disagree on like a particular outcome, they just want the stuff to be done. So often you'll hear on the doorstep saying like, oh, I can't believe you guys took like 10 years to even decide on this, or I can't believe like this is still coming back to decision, or what are all those politicians doing just debating this for the last 15 years and nothing gets done. And that's often because until recently, where there was a bit more political alignment, I would say, in some parts of Cambridgeshire, like until recently, like it's very difficult to square what the city, for example, city of Cambridge wants to do in terms of their political leadership with what the county until recently wanted to do, or the previous mayor, or obviously involving the members of parliament in the area as well, who have influence over some of the more strategic decisions. So for me, I think the argument for simplifying it comes from like people want to have decisions done more efficiently, want decisions to take less time and less layers to go through. And it's so difficult to explain on the doorstep, saying, people ask me now like, oh, what happens to the congestion charge? And I have to say like, well, there's a board meeting on the 28th, the GCP. If anything happens there, then it goes to highways and transport, then it has to go to full council. So even taking the time to explain on the doorstep, people just switch off, and I can tell why. And I would have, before I was in politics, I would be like, mate, I'm not interested anymore. Like by the time you explain to me the structures of local government, I'm like, will this pothole be fixed? Will I get the budget that I want? Like, I don't care like how many layers it takes you to do that. Like, will I get the stuff? And I think that's probably the best argument, because it's so difficult, I think, to, when you disagree politically on strategic things and strategic outcomes. Yes, there is compromise and cross-party working, but ultimately on some of the big decisions, it's really, really difficult to get stuff done.
So that's an important point, isn't it? Because I think for democracy to function properly, there has to be scrutiny, especially from the electorate, who have to understand what we're doing and judge us when we make the wrong decisions. And all that went on yesterday at the combined authority, gets swept under the carpet because nobody understands what's going on as well. And so that all this political, game playing, which ultimately means that Peterborough is going to lose out on a £200,000 electric bus terminal. Yeah. For very good reasons, but that's the actual consequence of all this, and that happens, and nobody's really aware of it. And so when they go to the ballots, whenever at district council, county council, apart from electing the mayor, we don't really elect combined authority. So district council send their members, but when we go to vote for our leaders, we don't understand what their record is because nobody's engaged with it because it's too complicated.
And there's also not that much coverage of the combined authority. There are a few people who are battling away, but there's not actually that much coverage of it, I don't think, and I don't think there's much understanding, as we've said, of what it does and what its powers are and how it works.
Yeah, I want to bring in a different perspective, because apart from like how efficient and how long decision-making processes are taken, the other thing I'm thinking about in terms of like one of the arguments, and the arguments against as well, we can go into those as well, but an argument for simplifying the structure is around like the larger the authorities are, the less democratically responsible they can be. And it's like often you see this in conversations with residents saying like, well, I know what my town council does, or like, oh, is this the town council or the town councillor or the parish council? Especially if you live in a smaller village, you think about like, okay, well, my parish council meets here, I know where they meet, I know who they are. But the larger those bodies become, like, what is the GCP, like who is even working there, like what is the combined authority, that's like from a public perception it becomes less, at least in perception terms, less democratically accountable. And then you have to think about like what are the implications of the structures on political participation, on how likely people are to be involved in various layers of civic and democratic engagement, from participating in consultations, local authority consultations, to registering to vote and voting for those various people. Does it make a difference if you have like 4 different types of elections on the ballot paper compared to only having one? I don't know, that's like an academic question, I guess. And also in terms of like turnout as well, again, like are you more likely to be engaged if you have to like basically decide for like 4 different things without really knowing like who decides on what? Because definitely when I went to the polling station before I was in politics, and you vote for like mayor, like did I really know exactly like what authority does the mayor have as opposed to the county council I was voting for? Probably not. And I'll be the first to admit I was an uninformed voter, and I only got informed after like I became involved in politics. And that's a problem, because what does democracy mean in that context if we don't even understand, even myself didn't understand those structures and what I'm actually voting for in the sense of like who is responsible for what.
David's probably different because he's a political. You've got degrees, several degrees in politics, but I'm the same as you, Alex. Just I voted in until I stood for election. I voted in local elections for years without understanding who any of the candidates were, and just ticked along silly old party political basis as well. And I think that what I've tried to do at town council, district council, and county council is try and increase public understanding, which is why we're doing this now, I guess, as well.
So what do you think, David, in terms of does the size of the local authority and like its responsibilities, do you think it links with political participation and the perception of accountability, in terms of the public perception of accountability?
It does. So, I mean, just to pick up what you say, I think there's an issue at the moment where you say who's responsible for buses, who's responsible for parks. I can't tell you, because it's the answer of who's responsible for buses takes about 10 minutes to explain, which is that's not helpful. I think there's an issue as well with, right, let's say you need someone to help you with a local government problem. Who do you go to? Let's say you live where I am. Do you go to one of your 4 town councillors, your 3 district councillors, your county councillor? And I'm sure we've all come across this, where you're sort of passing things up and down and around, and so I'm like I said, town councillor. Town is the same as a parish. I'm like at the bottom of the pile, and a lot of the emails I send are to district councillors and county councillors saying, can you help us with this? This comes under your remit. and I look like a Wally. Okay, I don't mind. I look like a Wally most of the time.
But it looks like you're buck passing as well, doesn't it? When you're
Yeah,
not.
it does.
That's the thing that I hate. Oh, you're just passing the buck. But and also when you get issues outside of your own division or your own ward as well, you try and pass them on to their ward councillor who's not as effective as you are. That seems like buck passing as well. But ultimately, we're elected to represent an area with a set of responsibilities, and you can't do all of it. You can't. I mean, I think we always try and if somebody's not helping out, we'll try and do those things. But it's very time intensive.
Yeah,
So I find that, just on Stephen's point, I find that very problematic from just communicating with residents, because I had many occasions where someone contacted me who was not in my division, and you have the choice of do you, as you should, pass it on to the councillor from that division that they won't respond as quickly as you perhaps, or if I already saw an email, I already read it, I already put the time to read the case, and I know it will take me a few minutes to report it somewhere. Actually, it's less time consuming in a way than sending an email to the other person and being like, this is from your area, but this is what you should do, and it's what I do. But ultimately, in terms of efficiency, it's better if I just get on the problem and sort it out myself and report the pothole or whatever it is. But also, that's where the politics comes into place as well. It's what do you do when you have a mixed political ward and you have different layers. So, for example, if I'm in a county ward, I'm a county councillor from a political party, so I'm a Labour councillor, and I have 3 Green Party city colleagues, and often unless you have a ward where you're all from the same party, and sometimes it doesn't happen, but most of the times you work together in a team and share your casework and so on, which means that when I get a city council issue, let's say someone reports well, we need more bins on this road, again, this is something that I would just take on myself and be well, I will sort out anyway because I know how to do it. Or basically say, do the correct process, saying I copy in your city councillor, I'll let your city councillor to deal with it. And it's really interesting because I usually just follow what should be done, who is responsible for what. But I know some people are well, obviously because you're still fighting elections and you want to have more stuff for your leaflets and so on, and just take on all this case and just do it as yourself. And I think that's not right, because ultimately if you're a county councillor, you should deal with county council issues, and you shouldn't take all the work for all of the different other representatives. You shouldn't do the mayor's work and the city council or district council work and the parish council work, unless you're in all of those positions some of you guys are.
But I think that's the best. Sorry, Dave. The best argument for unitaries is that to the residents, they just blame the council. When we've just described there's between 2 and 4.5, depending on where you live. And actually, for a resident's point of view, it would be good, wouldn't it, just to blame the council, a single electable authority, with recognisable people who represent you, rather than this. I think I calculate there's 35 different councillors represent St Neots at different levels, which for a population of about 37,500 people is one councillor every 1,000 people, and it's just too confusing.
They're not enough. I think some areas have more per 1,000 population than what you described in St Neots. But I wanted to ask as well, because we spoke about some of the arguments for, in terms of obviously the public engagement, democratic accountability, just simplifying the process and how long it takes to make a decision. Of course, the political alignment or lack thereof. What are some of the arguments against? So I gather that you're both quite for simplifying the process, but of course many people debating those topics are quite against, saying well, first of all, why fix something that's not really broken, although we can debate whether it's broken or not as a system. But also an argument I find a bit stronger than just let's not fix something that's not not very broken. It is about the fact, it's about priorities. It's about well, why should you discuss the topic of local government reorganization, restructuring now, when there's so many other issues, more urgent issues to deal with? And I find this quite interesting sometimes in debates, because people are well, you should focus on, I don't know, sorting out transport, but of course those things are connected ultimately. So where do you start, in that sense? Where do you start, and what are the other arguments against that you feel are coming across on this topic?
So there is a real issue there. Even if the end result is better, reorganization takes time and money and brain space, and that is a cost. Is now the right time? Now is not the perfect time, because local government hasn't got any money, or all the rest of it. And I think for a reorganization to happen would require central government to, I think it would need a change in the law. to happen. But I really do think that actually it's I think particularly in Cambridgeshire, the system is dysfunctional. It's not working. The other thing is it costs quite a lot of money to run all of those organisations, and that that could be the same amount of money could be used in delivering services. I do want to say there are a lot of good people working for local councils.
Absolutely.
Who really do put the know what they're talking about, put the effort in, and give a damn about what they're doing and are being professional. But the structures they're working in are get in the way of them being able to do their jobs effectively. That's a problem. So it's like, why now? It's like, okay, well, what is it? The best time to make a decision is yesterday. The second best time is today.
It's never actually.
Yeah,
That's the easiest.
Yeah, I move that we refer this to the subcommittee on paperclips. But there's also, I think, here an issue about democratic engagement or democratic understanding. That there's a proposal out at the moment from Phil Rogers and I think some colleagues of his, basically split Cambridgeshire into two unitaries. Which I'm glad to be having the discussion, but I kind of think that the discussion needs to be a bit more people-led or sort of citizen-led. Like what do people want? What do they think will work? I almost wonder if, the other thing is some of these things are quite technical, and I do wonder if a citizens' assembly would be a good way to go. How should local government in the east of England work, or England generally work? I have a particular bugbear that we have asymmetric devolution of powers in England, and for various reasons that's problematic. But maybe there's a project for the university, for Cambridge University, or for Peterborough University, or for Ruskin or something, to have a how do we make local government work? What do people want local government to do? And present the various issues, the various options, and so on. So the campaign is CAMS unitaries. Which is to have two unitary authorities for Cambridgeshire. I'm not a local government expert, but having had a little bit, just through my academic life of exposure to some stuff around it, there is a problem with democratic legitimacy. I think there's an opportunity to get some of that back, but also I think you have to show you're working on it. So why two unitaries? Why 5 unitaries, which is sort of what I was suggesting? And it's like I can't, that's my gut instinct. I'm not sure I can back that up yet properly with all the thing, and I don't think one person would be able to do that, because it's a big project to do. But I think it's worth doing. The other thing is it does involve national government getting involved to change the law. And look, I'm not saying that this is just a Conservative thing. I think unfortunately all parties would do this. There's always going to be a temptation to go for the system that you think is going to benefit your side.
Parties are overrated. But in terms of triggers, what might cause this? Yeah, one big trigger that might cause that, and there's two possibles it might happen, is firstly Peterborough going bust, which is on the edge of, that might force Westminster to get involved and force a local government reorganisation across Cambridgeshire. And also Peterborough, who are in a leadership crisis at the moment. They're a minority administration who I think they're going to vote. There's a vote of confidence for Wayne Fitzgerald, their leader. But there's not a coalition willing to step in. So there might be this vacuum of leadership, which also might force Westminster to get involved. So, in terms of that whole reorganisation, it might not be too far away. But in terms of the problems with it, so I think I broadly support Phil Rogers' ambitions, but always the problem is its scale, isn't it? And drawing arbitrary lines on a map. Because I speak, being a St Neots representative, we're right in the corner of Cambridgeshire, which means that loads of places which would naturally be part of our kind of ecosystem, Boston, Barford, Julo are in Bedfordshire, Mid Beds and Bedford Borough, so 3 different local authorities, which makes coordinated planning difficult. And how we split up Cambridgeshire into those 2 unitaries, I'd say that St Neots has much more in common with South Cambs than it does with Peterborough and Fenland. Yeah, I'm sure we could find commonality if we had to, but we're St Neots is a very different place than Peterborough, and it's a very different place than Wisbech. And so how you draw and you split that up and draw these arbitrary lines on the map is really difficult, which again is why I like district councils, because Huntingdonshire, it feels like Ramsey, St Ives, St Neots, Huntingdon feel like kind of similar places, Yaxley and Sawtry as well, where and that's difficulty is where you draw those lines. I think it's a really, really hard problem to solve.
I mean, I think there's a thing there that I think there is an issue in Huntingdonshire that you've got the larger towns in the south of the district, St Ives, Huntingdon, St Neots. And then the north of the district is you do have Ramsey, Sawtry, and so on. Yeah, but it is significantly more. Sorry.
Yeah, Yaxley's bigger than Ramsey these days as well. So yeah, and Yaxley feels a bit like Peterborough as well, doesn't it? If you go there.
Well, yeah, but this thing. I mean, I do wonder if there are places near. So I mean, and those are discussions to be had. I mean, the other thing is there is a value to boundaries that people know. People know what Huntingdonshire is. I mean, to an extent, people know what Cambridgeshire is, and there is a value to that. But yeah, it's a difficult one because if you go for places like you could make a good case that Huntingdon, St Ives, and St Neots, in a lot of ways, are kind of similar. They're different sizes, but market towns. I mean, you've got the 2 really nice ones, and then you've got St Neots. But
no, St Ives is the best out of the 3.
Let's not do this now.
But they're but that might be too small to be sensible, but equally it might be that you have to do some really sort of radical stuff and sort of do redrawing and moving things, and this starts becoming a huge complicated thing. It's like, well, maybe it would make more sense for the border, because St Neots literally runs up against the border between Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire, to move the border between Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire 10 miles towards Bedford.
As long as we're the right side of that move, as long as it's not Bedford encroaching on St Neots, because I don't want to be part of Bedfordshire, really. Yeah, but
but
you know what I mean. It's already happened, isn't it? Because Eton Soken used to be part of Bedfordshire, and it's happened in the past. Modern Cambridgeshire, but there's always this debate in St Neots about Huntingdonshire is not a real thing, but Huntingdonshire's got a lot more history than the current county of Cambridgeshire, which is a 1974 construct, basically, isn't it? It didn't really exist in this form until 1974, and so there's no real history to it. So local government boundaries change all the time. So I think there's good arguments sometimes for moving them.
Especially compared to the mid-cams, the new mid-cams constituency as well that St Neots is now in.
Don't get me started on parliamentary boundaries.
But in terms of reorganisation, it does that. Surely that would be an argument for keeping St Neots along with South Cambs. Is it keeps those? And I know that they don't completely map over each other, but there's a large amount of overlay between the parliamentary boundaries and the local government boundaries, and I think that is possibly an argument in the future for keeping St Neots in the south and not part of the new northern unitary. That's what
I kind of think that local government boundaries and parliamentary boundaries should match, and I would like to have more. That means you would have different numbers of MP per constituency. So if it's a local government area with lots of people, you might have 4 MPs, and some you might have 1. But I think that would be. I would quite like to see that.
Yeah, I agree. It's also like in terms of like it goes back into the conversation around accountability, and like a lot of the issues are national issues. People I have people like emailing me saying, oh, I have this immigration case, for example, and I have to refer, of course, the local MP, and like I'm it's very clear in my area, like who represents who, but in so many areas the boundary is different, and you can have like 2 MPs or like 3 MPs in an area. So actually like matching this local and national level could be quite positive. I just wanted to, before you jump in any more detailed conversation, I really need to take a bus in 5 minutes, like otherwise I won't get to St. Ives on time for my meeting at 10:30. So I have to.
You had to get buses in, didn't you? Had the last moment.
I have to leave 2 hours before, but like I'm moving closer soon, so like that's really exciting. But I wanted to just read a couple of comments because they're really interesting before I leave, and like feel free to carry on and just debate the boundaries and the parliamentary boundaries if you want to. There is a comment on Twitter that I really like. It made me smile because Glenys is saying, "I cannot believe that you're doing this at 7:50 a.m. I have to say, Glenys, we start at 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So.
It's also your fault, Alex, for being busy as well.
Yeah, well, it's my fault. It takes me 2 hours instead of like a 25-minute drive. So because I have to use the buses. And then also some interesting comments from Lewis here that actually appear on our screen, saying happy to contribute to a further discussion group. Of course, Lewis Herbert was the leader of Cambridge City Council and very involved in some of those conversations. So thank you very much for all your input, Lewis, as well. And we'll definitely be in touch. Maybe we can invite you on one of our future bus discussions as well.
I'd love to have some guests on here. So we'd love to talk to the Anthony Carpens, Lewis's, the Phil Rogers, even the Lucy Ness singers, Nick Johnson, Steve Counts, maybe as well. It'd be good to have other voices on here, wouldn't it? Yeah. To challenge us as well.
Yeah.
Well, okay then. Do you have any other final thoughts? I just realized that actually the live stream is on my end of the screen. So if I end the live stream, you can't carry on chatting about it. So.
That's good. I think this is a good length as well, and it's been lovely. And I think we should do it more regularly.
Yeah, we should do those like kind of 45 minutes bus talk at 7:30 a.m. That's my favorite time. Actually, we can try 6:30 a.m. next time. So
we need to do it on the bus one week, shall we? We can do it from our phones on the bus, and we can.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Although when the bus gets outside of Cambridge City, like there's a section where like it's not really well connected, so like the live stream may not work, but we can try definitely. So all right, thank you both. Have a good rest of your commute on the bus or the train, or hopefully you arrive by now.
I'm about to get the bus into the centre of Huntingdon.
Well, good luck with that. I'm about to get the bus number 1 or 3, and then the busway A, which is my favorite one because it goes straight to St. Ives and it's the best place ever there. So like I'm really looking
forward. And I'm sure we'll see on TikTok. We'll see every element of your in intense detail.
All right then. Well, thank you both and have a good day.
Bye-bye. Cool, you too. Thanks. Take care.